Hey, welcome back to another episode of these crazy people that just eat meat and can't stop talking about it. I got Neuro Diva Jules with me today, and let's also talk about the topic that's very dear to both of us, and that is the ASD community. Why don't you refresh people? How long have you been eating the carnivore way?
So I'm actually ketovore. But I want to do strict carnivore for the next like couple of weeks, maybe even a few weeks, to see how it makes me feel because I just want to feel what everyone is talking about. Everyone's talking about the carnivore zen. Like I'm curious. I'm sure some things are in my diet that I shouldn't be having. One of the girls that I talked to today was saying about how she doesn't use deodorant. Wow, I haven't even thought about that. Yeah, I need deodorant still. So maybe, one of the commenters were like saying that, yeah, maybe it's because you still have toxins in you. And I go, oh, so
Well,
I'm gonna do that.
Raymond Nazon went for quite a while, 6 months, maybe a year without toothpaste or deodorant. In fact, I don't even think for a long time there he was even washing with soap. He would just wash with water. So,
Whoa.
and he claimed to have no breath, no bad breath, no body odor. And ironically enough, he was at a carnivore gathering and he sent me a video clip of Jimmy Moore sniffing his armpits and testifying to the fact that Raymond had no body odor. Now, the funny part of that is that Mr. Moore, living low carb La Vida, or the original low carb icons, is now behind bars for the rest of his life. So,
What
yes,
happened with him?
he apparently had an inappropriate relationship with a younger person. So,
Oh, okay.
The rise and fall of Jimmy Moore. Jimmy has recently been arrested for what's called carnal knowledge, for sexual penetration of a 13-year-old girl.
so yeah, I like to rub that in on Raymond when I see him. So, Raymond, do the video with me more sniffing your armpit. Back when I was going down the rabbit hole of what sort of bacteria thrived on carbohydrates, one of them is Staphylococcus. Staphylococcus hominis lives on the human skin. It is the one that's largely attributed to body odor.
Really?
So,
Oh, that is super interesting.
but that being said, even if you are eating almost zero carbohydrate, just eating meat, right, which has almost no carbohydrate, you still have cells in your body that run on glucose to some degree. Your body
Right.
still produces sugar. So whether you have enough bacteria on your skin to create odor or in your mouth, which in the mouth it was streptococcus, which of course causes strep throat, and
Mhm.
staphylococcus of course causes staph infections, right? So keeping them to a minimum should lower your health risk when it comes to staph infections and strep throat. And of course, streptococcus works in conjunction with candida in the film in your mouth, break down carbohydrates so that they help feed each other by coexisting and working together to break down the starches.
You know what's so funny? I didn't put two and two together that like streptococcus would cause strep throat, staphylococcus causes staph. You just kind of blew my mind right now. Like, there's the
Well,
connection.
part of this was I was like, I think most people are okay with the idea that eating sugar causes cavities somehow, right? So
Yeah.
when I went down that wormhole, it said it was streptococcus that actually is the one that causes dental caries, right? So I even checked with my dentist. I said, hey, which bacteria is it that causes dental caries? And he's like, oh, it's streptococcus. Yeah. And he's like, let me double check that. And he went and checked it up and he's like, yeah, it's so the same thing that gives you a sore throat is the same thing that ruins your teeth. And
Mhm.
it thrives on carbohydrates.
I'm gonna look that up. After this, I'm gonna go on like a binge of like bacteria and the connection with all the diseases.
The study should be an autistic car.
I also know that the tar that we have is basically the same. Is made up of the same exact things that clog our arteries too. Like it's crazy the things that are there's such a huge connection. That's why if you have poor dental health, it is connected to your heart health.
I think it's true in both in dogs and humans that the bacteria that starts growing in advanced tooth decay and gum disease often makes its way to the heart, and particularly the heart valves. And when it thrives there, it damages the heart valves, so it can cause cardiac issues.
Can I want to question some of the audiences. Are you strict carnivore? And if so, do you guys use deodorant, and or have you ever experienced the carnivore zen? Because that's what I want to achieve. Right at the moment, I am ketovore. I don't remember the last time I ate fruits and stuff, a little bit vegetables, but yeah, I still need to use deodorant. I don't feel completely fresh. I don't know how people do that.
I never stopped using toothpaste or deodorant or soap.
Mhm.
It's kind of like I'm so used to that, and I'm
Mhm.
kind of routine oriented. I think definitely it's pretty hot where I live. I work out every day. I think overall, even when you use deodorant and stuff and you work out hard and it's really hot, you perspire a lot, you still notice body odor, especially like your shirt or something. You take it off later in your armpits, you can still tell. Des definitely declined.
I'm not gonna lie. If I had a really hard working day and I'm sweating like crazy, to me I smell like butter. Like I don't know why. I smell like butter to me. But oh yeah, sorry. Actually the word that I was looking for was plaque. Plaque is what it's the same plaque that you see in your teeth are the same ones that you find in your arteries. Sorry. But I just saw a comment that said that my Komash experience Zen carnivore Zen. That is super cool. Wow, Christina doesn't use your that's awesome. She's been like clay. Awesome, guys. Like, what's the best way can you describe carnivore Zen? Like, I mean, because I feel like I still get irritable every so often. I still get upset, things like that. So I can't even imagine what carnivore Zen is like.
For me personally, it was kind of a continuum from not having that brain fog, or that some days you wake up and you're just like, man, it's harder to think today. Everything seems more challenging, and every little challenge sort of provokes some anxiety. That's kind of what's gone away, and then seems to be sort of a space where you're very level-headed and everything's very clear. And I think that's what they're talking about. When I get a regular amount of sleep and stick to eating just meat and I work out, I'm there almost all the time. It takes a lot for me to get upset about something. Everybody's people talk about that too, even in the Facebook groups, and there'd be an eruption and people are like, why are you so zen about everything? And I'm like, and I used to be very, very sort of irritable, anxious person. It's been a big change. It seems to be just like the alleviation of anxiety in general. It seems to increase and increase and increase. Like there's just less and less of it. I mean, you always run into things in life where I call it like incident driven anxiety. Somebody dies, or you get in a car accident, or you lose your job, or you have a confrontation with somebody.
Just an anxiety disorder. That's what I was actually diagnosed with. I'm actually no longer diagnosed with autism, but I was actually diagnosed with adjustment disorder, where anything like that, where certain circumstances that happen really stresses you out, especially like a death in the family. I mean, for anybody, a death in the family would, but like change in moving, things like that. Totally understand that. But I'm also an angry driver. I'm one of those Asian people.
This penny had your name on it, man. Yeah, I was about to throw this penny at you.
I'm like, what? Don't you dare get in my lane, like kind of thing. I need to carnivore Zen.
I used to get a little road rage going on and stuff like that, and now people are like surprised when I don't, because a lot of people are like, well, if I'd be very upset, or if that happened. And in fact, I got rear-ended on the freeway just maybe 2 months ago, and it was bad enough I was worried they were going to total my car, and the guy left. So
what?
I was upset because I really like that car. And cars are so expensive. Interest rates are so high. I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to buy a new car because they're going to total it. And I was kind of upset for, like an hour. When I got done dealing with the highway patrol, I just went straight to the gym. I knew I was a little excited. And if I burned off some of that energy, it would all be easier. And then also I was like, he hit me pretty hard from behind. Typically people, they experience some aches and pains and neck pain. And I was like, what? I bet if I go to the gym and do just a medium workout, that I'll probably be better. I'll probably hurt less than if I just went home. The ability to deal with stressful situations and the lower anxiety and just the things that go wrong just have less of an emotional impact.
I'm looking forward to trying that. Yeah. It's one of those, I'm a little person, like I'm short, I'm like just under 5 feet. So it's one of those, like, you got to make that Napoleon complex.
Well, tell us what you typically eat in a day.
It typically in a day, first thing in the morning, it's usually, I actually like my meat raw. I use like beef chuck, just cut it up, because sometimes when it's large or steak like, it's hard to chew, and it's a little bit more tougher. So I just like cut it up in smaller pieces, and chewing it is just much easier. And I put with salt. I am not opposed to using like garlic and a little bit of spice. I'm not really a heavy coffee drinker. I'm not about the caffeine. I actually like the taste of coffee. So I use
Sure.
I use decaf coffee with heavy cream. I use a little stevia. That's something I enjoy with my coffee. But towards the end of the day, sometimes in Hawaii, we have like this thing called kalua pig. Kalua pig with cabbage. Nighttime, I'll have beef ribs. I eat sardines. I eat poke. I don't know if you guys like know what poke is, but it's basically like chunks of raw. It's a different form of sashimi. That's what my diet is. How I feel on it, I'm pretty happy. I mean, but it is hard in Hawaii, especially. Our culture is such a melting pot that you are tempted all the time. They have food trucks. We're huge on food. We're the state of spam, which love spam. So it's good that I can have that with no problem. But it's more of a staple with spam with rice.
Spam musubi.
Yeah, spam musubi. There's just such a huge variety. That's why being carnivore here is not hard in that sense, because you can go get yakiniku. Yakiniku is like couldn't barbecue your own meat yourself on a hot plate thing, and almost anywhere. There's so many places that have that. You can have endless meat. This is like buffet meat style. You can have that. You don't have to eat it with rice. You don't have to eat it with anything. They don't force you. No. Hold on. I even eat like intestines. I eat like they don't have brain. I've never tried brain. I'm kind of curious actually. But they have liver, they have all these other kinds of things. So it's really nice here. I'm so used to how my brain is right now that I can't tell what could have triggered it, because I'm just used to how I am. So this will be very interesting to see when I cut out everything, all the spices, and just stick to just salt. I'm very curious.
I noticed I taste the meat better without the salt, oddly enough. So the only time I even deliberately eat salt is when I start getting muscle cramps, because I know I'm dehydrated, which happens.
It really is, depending on each person, how well they're able to handle toxins and or oxalates. So I was in a chat and someone was commenting on one of Sean Baker's videos, was saying, well, how come Japanese people can handle such a large amount of green tea? And if you think about it, they were not exposed to as much processed foods. I mean, they're basically more metabolically healthy. Like, they were not exposed to processed carbs, processed sugars, all those like seed oils and vegetable oils. Only more recently, and within the last probably 20, 30 years, were they subjected to all of that. The culture has changed dramatically, and you see them having health issues. There's, like I was telling you before, there's probably no longer going to be as many centenarians from here on out. People who are metabolically healthy, which in the United States is only about 6.8% of people, you probably are going to not do so well.
Well, the interesting thing about the tea and the coffee is, number one, tea, and particularly green tea, is hard on the kidneys and has a lot of oxalates in it. And coffee too, depending on the type of coffee, can be at the same level. And a lot of those extracts they sell to help people lose weight, they work by simply binding with nutrients so that you can't absorb it, right? So when they started doing the laboratory work on it, again, I've posted those studies as well. They realized, yeah, when people take enough of it so that they start losing weight, it's because the nutrients are actually just passing right through them.
That's odd to me. That how did they conduct these studies and actually show any outcome when we only absorb roughly, was it 19% or something like that of nutrients from plants versus 48 to 50% from animal-based products? Like, it's just, our animal-based foods or animals. Like, it just boggles my mind.
I think it's particularly the oxalic acid in the green tea that's hard on people's kidneys, but the other things like the phytic acid and like that, if you consume tea, coffee, or the extracts with food at the same time, then they bind with the nutrients in the food. So then you don't absorb them. So the same reason why we don't absorb much of the nutrients in plant-based foods, you're just using that same sort of mechanism to prevent you from absorbing other nutrients. Well, of course, if you drink coffee completely separate from a meal or tea separate from a meal, then you don't get the same effect, right? And I've heard other people say if you really want to enjoy your coffee, don't enjoy it with your meal.
I think I ADHD. I forgot to say that I'm neurodiva Jules. I'm a functional nutritionist, and so that's why, if you guys, I like to put autistic functional nutritionist. So like for anybody who wants to ask questions about diet, if you guys are experiencing symptoms, we cannot give any medical advice, but like, if you're wanting to look for some information that could possibly help, we're here to help you guys. I do know carbs deplete our body with certain things. I actually haven't looked into tea, other types of things that deplete certain minerals. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. People tend to think that like carnivore is carnivore, but carnivore can fall underneath the ketogenic diet. Ketogenic is a way of how we naturally are. We were born that way. We're born being in ketosis. We only, as we get older, actually, since we introduce more carbs into our diet, that we go in and out of it.
Dare I repeat myself again? I've noticed like people, because of the awareness of like the ketogenic diet, and I think people are hearing about carnivore, it's like people who aren't really paying attention to them closely, they tend to conflate them. I've heard several people describe the ketogenic diet as a high meat diet, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not the case. You can't walk around correcting everybody, but I mean, that's exactly how I wound up here. I was on the ketogenic diet doing well, but I was like, man, I really want to eat more meat. And that moderate protein was and that's how I drifted into carnivore. Didn't realize there was this big community of people that were already doing it. I just kind of discovered that when I was like, hey, what happens if you just eat meat,
And I did that though. I actually kind of recall I did the Atkins diet, but I pushed myself to eat some broccoli, because that's what he ate. It was just like beef, butter, and broccoli, So I thought I was supposed to still have my veggies, but there's sometimes I just didn't really want to eat broccoli. I don't love broccoli, so
nobody really loves broccoli.
I would like to believe that's all true, but there are people who do actually love broccoli. I think people in my family, in fact, love broccoli. But would they want to eat that all day? No, absolutely not. I was listening to someone's podcast that like meat is not a binge food. Neither are vegetables. They're not binge foods, which I never thought about that, but that's true. It's not like I would want to eat it all day, every single second of the day, like I would do carbs. So you can tell there's like a drug-like factor to carbs,
Let's talk about fermented food for a second, because you hear these stories, particularly before I was on carnivore. You hear these stories about, well, if you eat meat, it's just going to rot in your intestines or something like that. It's going to rot in your colon, right? But then you find out that that meat is almost entirely absorbed long before it gets to your colon. There's almost nothing, and there's almost no meat getting down to the colon, and you find out it's actually the vegetables that ferment or rot in your colon. And I don't really think there is any clear line between fermentation and rotting. So, like when you ferment grapes to make wine, let's say, you're specifically using yeast for the conversion, right? But when you ferment cabbage to make sauerkraut or kimchi or something, it's a different batch of microbes that do the work. But it's still fermentation. So every time I go down that wormhole, I go, there's no difference between rotting, things that are rotting and things that are fermenting. Fermenting is more like controlled rotting.
Exactly. That's true. That is true.
People complain about bloating, and bloating is basically food typically rotting in your colon. That's really what it is. And it's foods like broccoli that they're notorious for that. I don't know too many people that eat the high meats. And it's like, when exactly does it become a high meat? Because, when I think in Iceland, it's a certain type of shark they bury it at the beach and then they dig it up later and eat it, and it smells really bad. You can buy some of them canned. They're all good, and I'm not exactly sure, but when you do eat the liver, which I'll probably never eat again because it stinks so bad, you do get sort of a euphoric sensation.
What?
It's like the intense sort of state of ketosis where your brain is just humming along and you feel awesome and you're just firing on all cylinders and you're kind of energized. And I do just get a little bit of that when I just eat raw meat. Sometimes, particularly when I'm going to lift heavy or whatever, I do eat the raw meat before I go because I get a little bit of that bump, both mentally and physically. You feel energized and you feel very clear. And I think Michael Maj alluded to it. Even a lot of people in the carnivore community who had psychiatric issues or dysfunction in the brain, whether it's, MS, they tended to feel better and do better on higher fat diets. I know a number of people, they cling to high fat because they feel their sanity and peace of mind sort of depends on it, or their healing. I get that. I kind of gone the other way. I don't need a lot of fat. I guess I have plenty of body fat to burn still. And I have a lot of muscle mass that I want to support and grow, right? And that's kind of I think that's the difference. I mean, a lot of people came to carnivore because nothing else worked for them. Well, depending on what was wrong with us before we got here, definitely influences our choices when we get here. I think in a roundabout sort of way, because I had really bad arthritis and it was really hard to move. When I was able to go back to the gym, that's what I really wanted. So I really went after it. For me, going to the gym and lifting is a priority, almost on the same way that some people are just trying to preserve their sanity. I had really high anxiety, but I know I didn't suffer quite the way that other people did with some of their other issues. And I'm very comfortable with my anxiety just declining. It's not that it's completely gone. It still rears its ugly head from time to time, but it's so manageable. I know it's not going to last that long.
What's funny about you're talking about arthritis, and it's like that's like calcium overly getting abundant in certain areas of your bone. And what's strange about that, the doctors push you, hey, supplement with calcium or something like that. What they don't realize is that if your body is absorbing calcium, especially not natural way, it will go anywhere. It will go to your eyes. It will go to your arteries. It will go. So what's important about the vitamin K2, vitamin D3 absorbs calcium, but vitamin K2 is specifically, which is only found in like butter and fat. That actually tells calcium, hey, let's not go into the places that we don't need it. Let's go in the bones, in the right places where it needs it, in your teeth, and not go in your arteries. It's just baffling to me. If you find that you're low on vitamin D, or if you're low on mental clarity or something like that, it's a lot of the times like people don't realize cholesterol, which we get from fat, right? Cholesterol is what makes us absorb vitamin D. It helps convert vitamin D in our bodies. Our brains are also made of cholesterol, so like we need that. There are like building blocks. When there's a fire, there are firefighters that put it out. So that's where doctors don't understand that. I mean, it's not completely wrong. Yeah, I mean, sure, you'll find cholesterol in the arteries, but they don't look beyond that. Why are they there? Because there are lesions that are happening within the artery.
And if you take the arterial plaque and you dissect it in a laboratory, less than 0.1% of it is actually cholesterol. And that's to your point of the calcium. You do have plaque on your teeth or in your arteries, and you have a lot of extra cholesterol. Some of it's going to wind up on the plaque. And sometimes, the calcium's there to stabilize the plaque, particularly in the artery, so it doesn't break free. But you can also have more calcium on that plaque than you need, which is just going to occlude the artery.
That's what actually happens. That's where atherosclerosis actually happens, is because the buildup, and it just keeps building. But I guess that there's a dysfunction where like it doesn't tell the body to stop, because it's supposed to heal. The lesions that happen typically are supposed to heal. If you're in a good metabolic state, that stuff heals. You're not going to get plaquing, any sort of blah. It won't stay. Almost as if like a scab almost. There's specifically a study now that's going on about the ketogenic diet though, and it's ongoing. People who have extremely high cholesterol, what is it called? Lean mass. Hyperresponder. That's the one. Yeah. It's really surprising what they were finding, that the people that were on it for about 4 years on the ketogenic diet, their cholesterols were high, but they had nothing else was wrong. They didn't see any clogging of their arteries, their calcium, the CAC scores,
Coronary artery calcium score.
Oh, sorry, right, that maybe 1%. That was 60% of them at least. The rest of them are like under. I think the score was 1 to 5, and only such a small percentage of them they're really not at risk of much. That kind of tells you a lot. This is not a dangerous way of living. It's our natural.
Well, and we could talk about statins too, because that comes up a lot. I know a lot of people on statins. I'm 52. A lot of people I know are similar my age or older. Almost all of them are on statins. So they ask me, it's like, how do you get away with eating all that meat? Why isn't your cholesterol under control? Why aren't you on a statin too? And when you look at the studies, the only real benefit a statin has is its anti-inflammatory properties. Even if it artificially suppresses your cholesterol production, that reduced cholesterol production doesn't seem to affect heart disease at all.
No, it doesn't. There was
So
real.
you're just suppressing liver function in the hope that you prevent a heart attack, right? And then it turns out it's not the suppression of cholesterol that's important. It's the fact that there's less inflammation, because it goes back to what you said about a chronic inflammation in the arterial wall is what causes the plaque to stay there. Normally we get injuries like that, and like you said, the body makes a Band-Aid, it heals up, the Band-Aid goes away, and you're good. When it's chronic, the Band-Aid grows, then the body calcifies it, and then you wind up occluding or blocking the artery.
Marjorie said, my cholesterol is scary low. That's interesting.
Yeah, she has low cholesterol. It's not really sure why.
That's very interesting. I would then ask, what is typically her diet? Has she have something else? Is there another type of symptom that she might have that would go, okay, maybe that might be linked to this, or especially if you're on a high saturated diet, and unless she's not, if she's mostly
she eats a lot of meat now. She's not strict carnivore. She used to be keto, and she's kind of gone more over to eating more meat. She's pretty picky about what she eats, and she works out almost every day. She's actually in very, very good shape.
Interesting, because there's got to be a balance, just because it is known that if you're too low in cholesterol, people end up dying from that.
I think hers is low enough to be life-threatening, but it's definitely at the low end of normal.
I'm curious about what she eats, because unless her body is not happy, my guess actually would be is that if she is intaking fat, high fat, it could be something about bile, because bile is what helps you absorb the fat properly, the nutrients from fat. So if there is an issue with her bile, if she has a gallbladder issue or something that's not working with the bile, it would make sense that her body is not absorbing fat properly.
Yeah, that's something to look into. I'm not aware. I don't think she's ever had a gallbladder attack or gallstones, and I don't think she's been on a low-fat diet, but yeah, maybe she's not absorbing enough fat.
A lot of the times people can have digestive problems, whether it be low stomach acid, it could just, and by that time, if your body's not breaking down food properly, it gets to the small intestines, and small intestines like, okay, I can't break this down, I can't use it, next thing, So I can really interject. I apologize. Marjorie says, I used to take ox bile. Should I take it again? I think so. Just try it out. If you're experiencing, diarrhea or something like that, you might want to pull back a little bit, but just kind of play with it a little bit. It's not going to harm you. It's not going to hurt you. It's natural. It's, sometimes your body just needs that extra support. If anything, I would even take actually hydrochloric acid with it, just because it's a little bit, I believe, alkalizing, ox bile. So if you want to take it with HCl, hydrochloric acid, I think it would benefit you more than anything, because HCl is what naturally is our acid in our stomach. It will help break down your foods much better, your fat much better, and ox bile should help you then absorb it. Another hormone that will help kick in your natural ability to, once your acid level in your stomach is higher, your body will naturally kick in. Gastrin will help even more so, kind of kick in more to be able to naturally break down foods now, naturally build up your ox bile to be able to break down your foods and extract the nutrients from it. But it should help with your cholesterol.